Welcome back to some new r/PettyRevenge stories, where people share small victories over those who wronged them. I hope you had a great day. Thanks for all the likes and comments on the last video. And now let's start with the first story. It's called Queue Jumper. This was around 8 years ago. Every day I had to catch the train to work. In the UK we have a pastry shop called Greggs. They used to make these delicious almond croissants. And there was a Greggs in the station where I caught my train. It was a popular shop. So every morning there would be a queue of 10 or more people waiting for their breakfast and coffee. On this particular morning it was especially busy. And one woman decided the queue wasn't for her. She walked straight to the front and placed her order. An almond croissant and a normal croissant. The staff politely told her to go to the back of the line, which happened to be right behind me. After about 15 minutes of her sighing and grumbling behind me in the queue, I got to the counter, bought all the almond croissants and normal croissants, 3 of each, and gave them to some homeless people nearby, right in her line of sight. Her reaction was absolutely priceless. The next story is called Doing a Favor. I was in Navy Aviation and used my GI Bill to get my A&P license. That's the FAA certification required to work on non-military aircraft. Small Air had a new boss. I applied, got the job. Small operation, maybe 10 mechanics total. I grew up with an older crowd, so I typically get along great with people in their 60s. I've watched all the old shows, know their music, etc. They usually love me, except for one guy. Let's call him Ray Ray. Well, Ray Ray was a grumpy stick in the mud. For some reason he disliked me. Maybe because of my personality. I'll admit, I can be a bit much sometimes. That said, if someone is uncomfortable with my jokes or anything else, I'm always respectful and adjust accordingly. At the end of the day, I'm there to work. Nothing I do is dangerous or wildly inappropriate. But for those of you who know military folks, you know what I mean. I get my work done, I do it correctly, I own up to my mistakes, and I ask for help when needed. Ray Ray never addressed me directly, but I could tell he wasn't my biggest fan, so I did my best to avoid him. Over the next 2 years he made it his mission to nitpick and find reasons to complain, seemingly trying to get me fired. He would double check my work, even though he wasn't QA, just to look for mistakes and reinspect things I signed off on. I reported him to my supervisor and boss. Their response? Thanks for letting me know. I'll take care of it. Just ignore him. Spoiler, they never did. Now, my boss was an old Marine. We got along well at first. In fact, during my interview, he and my supervisor explicitly told me Ray Ray is a grumpy old man who finds reasons to hate someone and then tries to get them fired. I appreciated their honesty and typically steered clear of Ray Ray. When I had to interact with him, I was professional. Boss seemed to brush off Ray Ray's complaints, which made me feel like he had my back. There was a guy a few years younger than me. Let's call him Javier, but he had been there longer. We became friends and he showed me how to do certain inspections. I specialize in electrical. Because of our specialties, we became the dynamic duo. We volunteered to go fix problems out in the heat and rain, skipped lunch and breaks to get things done, and racked up overtime. Then things with boss changed. He authorized overtime, then yelled at me on the hangar floor for working too much. This happened twice during overtime season. Later, Javier and I had an issue that just wouldn't go away. Boss was no help, neither was the supervisor. Boss suggested we contact the manufacturer. We did. We got a recommendation and tried it. Boss then told us the manufacturer didn't know what they were talking about and that they just built the product. They don't fix it. Then he said we had wasted our time. He gave us his own suggestion. Javier and I tried to explain fluid laws and why his idea physically wasn't possible. He insisted we do it anyway. So we agreed. If it worked, we'd apologize and ask how he knew it would. If not, we were clocking out and leaving. We clocked out and left. A lot more happened, but eventually I started applying elsewhere. One day, Javier and I were working on a plane with our required item. It wasn't due for inspection, but Ray Ray wrote up a ridiculous discrepancy. It didn't affect airworthiness, so we deleted the write-up. No big deal. Much drama followed, and a few days later, boss decided to fire me. He called me in and laid out his reasons. The key takeaway? He told me that when Javier and I walked off the job, we should have quit, because we would be doing him a huge favor. I responded, calmly, but not exactly professionally, that I had reported Ray Ray for targeting me, and nothing was ever done. They knew Ray Ray was an issue when they hired me, but still did nothing. I always adjusted my behavior when asked, and kept it away from those who didn't like it, which, by the way, was just Ray Ray. And a few more points. Boss suddenly realized firing me might give me a legal recourse. So instead he told me to get back to work. Not 5 minutes after I left his office, I got a call with a job offer. I accepted on the spot. I told Javier, who knew about my conversation with boss, that I was going to do boss a favor. Forget giving notice. I would grab my things over the weekend and quit on Monday. The next day I realized that plan didn't work logistically. So I packed my box, got a parts guy to load it into my truck with a forklift, and took it to my new job. No 2 weeks notice, just packed up and left. I texted Javier to say I'd be back to drop off my uniforms and airport badge. He told me I'd have to hand them over in the parking lot, because I wasn't allowed in the building or hangar anymore. Apparently someone saw me leaving with my box and asked boss, did he quit? I saw him take his stuff and leave. Boss came out to the hangar floor absolutely furious. Let's just say he had a lot to say about me, and none of it was nice. Javier got in trouble for checking my box, which for non-mechanics is standard procedure to make sure no company property is taken. But he didn't care because he disliked boss. The parts guy got in trouble for using the forklift without permission, but again, worth it to him. I dropped off my badge and uniform with Javier, who told me boss locked himself in his office, then left early. I thought that was the end of it, but then I heard from Javier that even after I left, boss kept talking about me. So I did the only logical thing. I told Javier, Andy, Robbie and Quentin about job openings at my new place. 3 months later, Quentin got hired. Turns out boss still couldn't let me go. And now, every time there's an opening, I refer all my old co-workers. My goal? Poach every decent mechanic he has. Make him look back to his boss for the turnover during his time there, and keep living rent-free in his head. I've been at my new place for about 8 months now, and I still hear from old co-workers that boss complains about me. Guess I left an impression. The third story is called Suburban Road Rage. I live in the country. I was driving my baby to daycare early one beautiful spring morning in 2023. The daycare is located near the town center in a fancy little village. There's a large, widely spaced 4-way stop sign at the village entrance, about half a mile from daycare. Most of the time it's very quiet, never busy. On that morning I was talking to my baby about the day. I went through the stop intersection, and shortly thereafter I noticed a car tailgating me very aggressively and honking. This was while we were going through a residential village at about 20 miles per hour. I brushed it off, thinking the person was just in a rush or had a bad morning. I didn't think much of it, because I was about to pull into the daycare's driveway, getting out of their way. Well, they turned in after me. That's when I started to get a little nervous. They pulled in next to me. Now I was really on edge. I unbuckled my baby, talking to her calmly, because I had no idea what was about to happen, when this woman jumps out of her car and starts yelling at me. It's about 7:45 in the morning, on a beautiful day. I was so surprised. Apparently I had taken her turn at the 4-way stop sign. I replied, "Oh, so that's why you were tailgating me," which in hindsight was probably not the best thing to say. But honestly, I had just figured it out and was kind of congratulating myself. I didn't intend to be rude. I immediately apologized, saying I didn't realize, but she kept yelling at me, in front of my baby. She just wouldn't stop. I was completely confused as to why she was so upset. I'll admit, I'm not a morning person, so I wasn't exactly thinking quickly. I apologized a few more times, and then said, "It's a beautiful day. Let's move on." Then I turned my back on her and went inside. Apparently, that was the wrong move. Turns out she was another parent at the daycare. She actually went to the center director to complain about my driving, saying I made it unsafe for her. I got called in and was warned to drive more carefully. I was so mad. She went out of her way to make my life harder at my kid's school. I will never forget that lady's face. Fast forward 2 years. I have a doctor's appointment in the same town. I walk into the office. And guess who is the receptionist? She knew it too, because she wouldn't make eye contact. I took the clipboard and sat there seething while I filled it out, trying to talk myself down. But it didn't work. Turns out I can be a little petty, because when I handed the clipboard back to her, I said loudly for the whole office to hear, "Oh, hey, it's you. Do you remember that time when you yelled at me at 7:45 in the morning about that stop sign? I know I accidentally cut you off, and I apologized. But it was really unnecessary of you to yell at me in our kids' school parking lot about it. That is not something a reasonable person would do." The whole time, this lady just stared at her keyboard. Her co-worker didn't though, and neither did the other people in the waiting room. They were definitely paying attention. Honestly, so was I. The next story is called Internet Cafe. I gave my hotspot password to a friend, because she was struggling financially and was basically homeless at the time. No big deal, I was happy to help. What I wasn't happy about? She handed that password out like it was a free sample at a grocery store. Next thing I knew, my backyard turned into a full-time lounge for her and all her friends, most of whom had a strong interest in, let's say, alternative lifestyles. I don't judge, but I am not okay with losing my high-speed data. These folks were out there at 2 AM, streaming who knows what, and I was stuck with internet speeds that made dial-up look like cutting-edge technology. So I did what any rational, data-loving person would do. I changed my hotspot name from iPhone to FBI/DEA surveillance and updated the password. And just like that, problem solved. My backyard went from a 24/7 internet cafe back to a peaceful, empty space once more. The last story is called Truck Driver. This happened last summer when my girlfriend and I were driving back from her sister's house. It was a long drive, and since we left late at night, we ended up on the toll roads around 1 or 2 in the morning. At first we noticed flashes of light in the distance, and assumed it was heat lightning since it was summer, so we didn't think much of it. A little while later, we got behind a semi-truck on a 2-lane road. When we switched lanes to pass him, everything seemed fine, until he moved behind us and started flashing his brights non-stop. That's when we realized that the heat lightning we had been seeing was actually this guy flashing his brights at every car in front of him. On top of that, he started honking at us. Stunned, we switched lanes to let him pass, and as we did, he threw up a rude gesture. At that point, my girlfriend decided to stay behind him, because she didn't want to drive next to him. As we kept driving, he did the same thing to another car. After a few minutes, I joked that we should give him a taste of his own medicine. My girlfriend said, "Yeah," and she started flashing her lights at him, honking, and then sped past him. I even waved at him in a not-so-friendly way. By the time he realized what was happening, we were already far ahead. He tried to catch up, but his truck just didn't have the speed. We couldn't stop laughing. We never figured out why he was doing it, but blinding people at night like that was just reckless and dangerous. He wasn't trapped in traffic or anything. He was just being a menace. So in the end, we got our petty revenge and had a good laugh all the way home. Thanks for watching the video to the end. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. And if you have time, watch another one of my videos. Also, if you want to support me further, check out the channel membership or Patreon. And now, I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.